Okay, so here we are again. You guys are working in Photoshop on your Photoshop pieces. And I just wanted to show you guys some examples from the past. So literally there's no tests, there's no pop quizzes, you don't have to remember any dates for this course. I'm literally just giving you this as some research, some background information for what you're working on. So take it or leave it. I hope you take one thing out of it. There's a lot in this little talk. So let's okay, great. I think this is it. All right. So I am going to talk to you guys today about, let's see. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Um collage, which is, as you know, ripping up two-dimensional things and putting them on top of each other. Decollage, which is the opposite of that. That's like ripping pieces off to reveal what's underneath. Um, Assemblage. I don't know if you guys have had your art appreciation course or any art history courses yet, but assemblage is a three-dimensional collage, basically. So it's found objects that have been affixed together with like glue or screws or whatever. Um, Photo montage, which usually traditionally happens by double exposing a print, and compositing. And I'm calling what we're doing here in Photoshop, digital compositing. So we'll look at some examples of that. First of all, we have this guy named Pablo Picasso. Sounds delicious. Could go for some queso, even though it's like 6 a.m. here. Um, no, Pablo Picasso is, I guess, the most famous artist of the 20th century. And so you guys have probably heard his name before. He is known as the father of Cubism. And Cubism, of course, is a movement that that started to split up the canvas into different into different sections. It started to section a canvas apart, and at first, the reasoning for sectioning up the canvas was to show different sides of a three-dimensional object in a flat surface. So if you can imagine, like, how do you show all sides of a face? Um, and this was kind of the invention to show that Cubism. However, Picasso is also credited with being the inventor of quite a few other ways of making art, and one of those is collage. So, as we see here, this is guitar, sheet music, and glass. So, if we've got this wallpaper, some construction paper, we've got some sheet music, a little drawing that he did, and then we've got this newspaper here. I don't know if this is a painting or if it's like a paneling or something. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, we can see that one thing that you guys can do is you can pick different pieces apart from the images that you choose, and then you can create a new overall image. So, like, this could be like the basketball, perhaps. Maybe you make this shape out of the trees, and you could fit those together into the overall shape of a basketball. I mean, I'm sorry, of a guitar. Um, so that's one thing that we can steal from Picasso. I don't think he'll mind. So here is this is much more cubist in appearance. This is guitar and sheet music. So we can see that we've got like the guitar shape right here, sort of jutting out, I don't know. And I guess the guitar is, sort of coming down here even. Um, but this one's, much more cubist in origins. And is that the same paper? It is the same wallpaper. Okay, cool. Here's another Pablo Picasso. So this is Glass and Bottle of Susie. And we can see that the Susie here is a liquor bottle. So he's peeled off the label of this bottle of liquor to include in the collage. It looks like these are This is from, I think this is just like a newspaper that he's ripped up. That's what it looks like. Here's another Picasso. He's just pinned things to this one. I think it's paper, although some of it looks like fabric. I wonder if this like more ornate thing is like fabric. Here's Juan Gris. He is a contemporary of Picasso, we can see by the date. This is George Braque. He is collaging. There's a lot more drawing here. Now, obviously, you guys are not allowed to do any drawing because that would be something native to Photoshop. Those colors would be created by Photoshop. But we can like sort of pull a little bit of inspiration from his composition here. Another George Braque. These are just so beautiful, I think. Okay. This is Vladimir Tatlin. Vladimir Tatlin is a Russian constructivist. So at the time, this art movement was really interested in thinking about how can they make art practical, how can they make it, work for the better good of everyone in Russia. And so Tatlin was really interested in industrial design and in testing out a lot of industrial materials to see what would happen. So we can see this combination of like wood and tin and wire and like these specific kind of bolts and things, and just sort of really valorizing the average worker, which would eventually turn into the Soviet Union. This is Tatlin at Home by an artist named Raoul Hausmann. Raoul Hausmann is an artist working post-World War I, pre-World War II, so between the wars. And obviously this is dedicated to Vladimir Tatlin, the previous artist that we looked at. Sorry. So if we, if we look here, we see that, and if we're going to steal something from Vladimir Tatlin, we can see that he's actually cutting things out along their original contours, right? So he's literally cutting these objects out, and he's putting the full object that he has cut out on top of, another full object that he's cut out. But the way that he has done this kind of doesn't make a lot of logical sense, right? And so I think what it forces us to do is it forces us to read this metaphorically. So we can see here that this is like a mechanical steering column, I think it looks like. And that is probably, not only is that a reference to Tatlin being interested in industrial innovation and how technology and new materials, can make the world better for the average Joe, or the average, what's a Russian name for that? Vladimir. But also there's something kind of poetic about the steering column being connected to the brain here. I mean, the brain is sort of, I guess, our steering column. We have this sort of like aircraft up here. We've got this fellow back here, and we've got this, these body parts right here. This is made in 1920, so I always think about World War I when I look at this. And, I don't know if you guys are big history buffs or fans of World War I. Probably your dad is like a big fan of World War II. So you probably are very familiar with World War II, but then World War I seems like kind of a minor war, but it really wasn't. If you can imagine the beginning of World War I, when people would go to quote-unquote war, what they meant was, I'm going to dress my people up in blue, and you dress your people up in red, and we'll meet on the battlefield. It's almost a sporting event, for the wealthy people and the sort of generals that run the show here. And you would just sort of shoot at each other, and then when we've had enough, or when it's clear that one side has won more than the other side, we'll meet at a negotiating table. And usually I'll say, okay, you won that piece of land 5 years ago when we did this, and so now I want that piece of land back 5 years later, blah blah blah, And it's a little bit of a gentlemanly pursuit, right? Um, However, what happened with World War One, all of these countries around Europe and even beyond Europe eventually um, were fully invested in defending each other, and created these alliances so that it literally, you were on one side or you were on the other side. So every country got involved in this war. Also, technical innovation got involved in this war. So, for example, people were literally dying because they fell off of their horses. Um, so that meant that instead of wearing like a feathered cap while you were on a horse, you started to wear helmets. People decided it wasn't a great idea for the enemy to see us and to be able to spot us so easily. So instead of these, um, bright red uniforms, why don't we try out something called camouflage? Um, Additionally, noxious gases, toxic gases were invented, and it was a really, really horrible, last 30 minutes or so of your life, feeling your nerves, go through agony as you like sort of crumble under this, under the gases. So people started to wear gas masks. So imagine a gentleman coming up to you with like a bayonet of sorts in bright red with a feather in his cap, and you're kind of going to get into a little fist fight with you, in which someone could die, versus this like monster walking up to you with a gas mask um, and a helmet and in camoufage, then you can barely see him, and all of his human features are sort of blurred out. Trench warfare was also an invention of World War One. Men would dig trenches, put barbed wire around the trenches, and literally live in those trenches for weeks at a time. Um, Another invention of the war was the machine gun. People didn't quite understand how to stop a machine gun at that time. And so if your enemy set up a machine gun, the commander would just send, flank after flank of men towards that machine gun until the machine gun was overwhelmed. So, you know, the machine gun was kind of known as the meat grinder in World War One, because if you were on the front lines or even next in line or maybe even fourth or fifth in line to rush at the machine gun, it was almost certain death until eventually your men could overwhelm that machine gun. So World War One was really, really a wild shift in what it meant to go to war. Um, and and it really destroyed the landscape of Europe, quite literally. And it also destroyed bodies. So people would come home and half of their bodies would be gone, and they would be half man, half machine, or part man, part machine, or something. So we begin to think about things like cyborgs, and these sort of things that seem to be in science fiction, but now were kind of a reality. Anyway, here's a new Raoul Hausmann. This is abstract, totally abstract. So if you want to steal something from Raoul Hausmann, you can cut out, the things along their original. You can be faithful to the original contour of the thing that you're cutting out. You can be totally abstract. That's fine as well. This one kind of looks like money, also from Hausmann. This is Hannah Hawk. This is cut with the kitchen knife through the last Weimar beer belly cultural epoch in Germany. It's a mouthful. So Hannah Hawk was a Dada artist, and I think it's kind of interesting to note she's the first female artist that we're looking at here today. And I think it's that's kind of interesting to think about. Kitchen knife, oh my goodness, sorry, to think about the way that she describes creating this is cut with a kitchen knife. And this kind of makes me think about, the origins of collage a little bit. And so what I would like to posit is that everything that we've looked at here, we've looked at, Pablo Picasso's wine bottle labels, newspapers, magazine clippings from Raoul Hausmann. We've looked at, all of these things. Literally, you could dig these images out of the trash sometimes. And so what I want to say is that every image that you put into your collage, you are creating a context, a new context for that image. All right, so it has the context of your composition. However, it also maintains at the same time an original context. Okay, so we see that we have this ballerina right here from Hannah Hawk, right? And this ballerina is part of this overall chaotic composition, which is sort of describing what Berlin was like between World War I and World War II. Sorry, a really wild time there. We can see that there's these two heads, and so we have this sort of like weird little mutant figure here. But we also recognize that this is probably a ballerina from an image that was lying around Hannah Hawk's house, right? In fact, we might even think that she has a stack of images on her kitchen table that she's cutting up. So I want us to think, okay, there is an original source, and then there is this new source that we are creating when we're working here. And there's a little bit of poetry there. It's something that, for example, painting does not have. Another thing that painting does not have is when I imagine the original sources for all of these images, I think about Hannah Hawk's life. I think, oh, she must have been digging through the trash. She must have been keeping newspaper clippings that she thought were interesting, maybe cutting up flyers, maybe, going through, buying a magazine every once in a while and going through that stack of magazine images. So, really, even more so than painting, I think we can say that the original source material for collages is really linked to our personal lives. Okay, so that's just a little bit of poetry for you guys before you, as you're working, just to get you a little bit inspired about, the potential of collage work. All right, this is Hannah Hawk. This one gives me nightmares, so I just thought, since I have to see it, you have to see it too. Oof. Okay, this is Kurt Schwitter's. This is our first real example of assemblage. Everything here is 3D. We have the the wire up here, and then we have this wood that's sort of put onto top of each other. Here's Kurt Schwitter's again. He's working with like tissue paper here, but you guys can easily work with transparency in Photoshop, right? So if you're going to put one layer on top of another, you can make that top layer semi-transparent. Kurt Schwitter's again. Here's Max Ernst. We are well into assemblage now. Remember, assemblage is like a 3D version of collage. We've got this Carol Tige piece. I really like this as a way to steal stuff because I feel like sometimes students feel like they have to make really delicate selections. And that's true. He's made a very delicate cut right here to cut out this boat. But notice that he's been very strategic with how he's made that very precise selection. And the rest of the selection is just a square, you know. So it's totally not cheating to just have a square sometimes, right? Here's this guy, Salvador Dali. Have you guys heard of Salvador Dali? Just kidding, that's Salvador Dali. If you guys have been to the Dali Museum in St. Pete, right around the corner from us, or I guess right around the corner from you guys. So Salvador Dali is a is a surrealist artist, and as a surrealist, he is concerned with subconscious motivations, and he's concerned with analyzing dreams and things like that, very influenced by Sigmund Freud and psychoanalysis. But if we're to think very concretely about what he's doing here, he's just taking this shape and he's repeating this shape over and over again, but with little variations everywhere. So we can see this lion's head with different variations. Sorry, even the painted lion's head right here, and back here. All of these are things that we're able to do in Photoshop. So if you repeat something over and over and over again, you can do it with a slight variation each time to create a composition. Here's another Dali collage. He's more known as a painter, of course. I just thought this was kind of interesting because there's a lot of white space here. And so if you're interested in using a like interesting and strategic white space, that's not cheating. It's totally valid. This is some of the famous propaganda posters from Soviet Russia. These are very influential for the history of graphic design, and we can see there's just really strong diagonals and really strong repetition of the form here. This is Jarno Hartfield. He was a German artist just before World War I, and he would flee Germany during World War I. Here, you can see that John Hartfield is not a fan of Adolf Hitler, who's coming into power here in 1932. Of course, he doesn't know that Hitler is about to commit mass genocide. So his problem with Hitler is that he thinks Hitler is a little too greedy, and he thinks that the people that support Hitler are only concerned about material wealth in Germany, and he thinks there are other things that are important. What's it all about? Here's this kind of an artist joke, this little double portrait here where we've turned this classic sculpture, and I guess, I don't know, we're sort of supposed to, when we see a classical figure, especially like a nude like this, I think we're supposed to ignore the fact that their junk is out, but it's kind of funny. So this artist is just sort of, making a little joke of that. This is Lee Krasner, Bald Eagle. Lee Krasner was married to the famous abstract expressionist painter Jackson Pollock. Jackson Pollock made these splatter paintings. We can see this splatter paintings right here because this is a collage that Lee Krasner made by literally ripping up one of Jackson Pollock's drawings. So if you're ever mad at your partner and your partner is an artist, get some revenge by ripping up one of their drawings and making it into your drawing. This is a portrait of Robert Creeley. Robert Creeley was a beatnik poet, but as we can see here, this is just such a confusing portrait. First of all, the values are all so close together. And second of all, the patterns are really confusing here. But if you look for a while, you can sort of make out here are the eyes. This is the nose. This cloud area is like a beard. So it's really interesting to think about how this portrait of Robert Creeley was formed and how confusing it is. And it sort of mimics his writing style. This is Bruce Connor. You sort of get this image made out of a lot of bodies. Eduardo Paolozzi made these these little booklets of all of these images, kind of a precursor for what we might think of as scrapbooking in a way, but really just sort of a collection of images and curating images. And one of the things that I like about these pieces is that they're not very carefully cut out. So, it's not really about the perfection of the way the image is constructed. It's a little bit more about the images and the metaphor that they might produce next to each other. This is a decollage image. So Francoise Dufresne says that he was inspired to make this because he saw billboards where people would post posters, and as people would rip down old posters, what would be left would just be the edges of the posters that had been there before. So yeah, so he made this work by stacking a lot of paper on top and then slowly peeling that away. So if you want to try that for one of your collages, that's totally valid. You can just repeat a stack of your images maybe 20 times, and then slowly, layer by layer, just sort of start removing pieces of that. That could be an interesting experiment. Oof, this one's so depressing, right? This is like post-apocalyptic almost. The Last of Us. Ugh. All right, here's something exciting. This is Richard Hamilton. He's a pop artist. Most pop artists that were famous were American. Richard Hamilton is really the only non-American pop artist. He was British. Just what is it that makes today's homes so different, so appealing? So there's a ton of jokes here. There's a ton about advertising, a ton about like the sort of sexualization of bodies meant to sell things like canned ham. I love this vacuum. Ordinary cleaners reach only this far. I mean, what a funny image. That's hilarious. Then we've got this moon over them. Like, what a funny little homescape here. Richard Hamilton's portrait of Marilyn. Of course, Marilyn Monroe is every pop artist's favorite subject matter. Here's another Marilyn. This one is interesting because she's sort of grayed out. You can almost see her disappearing as if it's mimicking her death. Another Bruce Conner piece. It might be interesting if you remove the subject instead of removing the background. So if you remove the subject, look at how, we have we have this bowl here that frames this cityscape portrait, right? Here we have these landscape photographers just photographing the landscape and some people swimming around here. This image, this sort of cutout, is placed in front of this actress here, and it totally changes the vibe of this sort of like romantic dialogue between two people into, is this guy outside of her window? Does she know he's there? What's happening? This is the voyeur. I thought this was kind of interesting because, okay, so Dorothea Behrens is not cutting things out, obviously, along their original image point, right? So that's not what she's doing. She's also not forming a new image in the way that Picasso formed a new image. So, but it also doesn't feel totally abstract. So I don't know, I thought that this was kind of like a weird fourth category that I couldn't quite categorize what was going on here. So I just thought like, well, okay, let's put that up there. That's its own thing that we could steal from. We can steal an idea from. This is Gulliver. If you don't know what to do, sometimes you just need to dramatically change the scale of one of the images in your composition. You could cut off people's heads. Here we go, right here. Replaced with another head. Little Frankenstein figures here. This is Robert Rauschenberg signs. This is kind of like every big famous, moment from this from the 60s. You can see MLK, JFK, the moon landing, references to Woodstock, Vietnam, etc. This is another Robert Rauschenberg. Robert Rauschenberg invented something called the combine. He called it a combine, which is half collage. We can see the collage happening underneath some of the painting up here. and then half assemblage. So we can see the sculptural element down here. And then we have this thing hanging off the bottom of the painting. Feels like a body part, like there's some sack body part thing that hangs off of the lower half of the body. I don't quite have the word for that. This is Jasper John's painting with two balls. Haha, that's an art joke for you guys. So painting with two balls here, we can see that Jasper Johns has split his canvas here, and he's included these two balls. So this is also sort of a combine. And you can make out a newspaper under here. When you see these in person, you realize that there's collage all underneath the painting right here. And Jasper Johns, even though this looks like a really fast painting method, it's not. This is encaustic, which is a pigmented paint, sorry, a pigmented wax. And the wax takes days and days to dry. So you can imagine him just sort of slowly making these brush strokes. But unlike the drip paintings of Jackson Pollock, for example, it's a slower and more strategic process. This is Jasper John's target with plaster casts. Again, this is collage and built up, and then over the collage is this wax paint target. And then up here we see that he has cast different body parts. Originally, when you saw this, these were doors that were closed, so you would walk up to the painting, open the door to see what was behind it. Now, I think this is in the MoMA, and it's behind glass, so these doors are like permanently open, and obviously you can't touch it, but anyway. This is Chris O'Philly. This is space shit. Chris O'Philly is an artist who saw cow poop as kind of um, a holy item, like a really sacred item to work with. So he started using the cow poop in everything that he made. So when you would go to an exhibition of this series of works that he made, there would be flies gathering as like, because these are like made out of poop, these little balls are poop. But I can tell you, I live in Texas now. I don't know, you guys have a lot of horses there at Ocala, but here in Texas, we have a lot of cows, and we definitely, run on the fertilizer from cow poop. So it kind of makes sense to me now that I'm here. It makes a little bit more sense than before. This is another piece by Chris O'Philly. You can see he's up to the same old tricks. He's got his cow poop holding up the canvas, and there's some random cow poop here. This is called Aphrodisia, so he's listed, various people he's inspired by that are African American, sorry. So we've got Miles Davis here, we've got Cassius Clay here. So kind of cool piece. This is another piece where he has used cow poop. This is the Holy Virgin Mary. Very controversial at the time that it was created, not only because it's a depiction of Mary, but also and a depiction of Mary with cow poop, but also you can see here that she's depicted with stereotypically African features. So I think all of those things combined to play out really controversially. This is a piece by Tracy Emin, Everyone I've Ever Slept With, 1963 to 95. I was thinking, quilting is kind of like a collage. And this is, she made this tent that you can sort of crawl into and read, the list of names and certain situations in which she describes sleeping with these people. And some of these people are sexual partners, as you might imagine, but some of them are just friends that she happened to spend the night with. So it's really just memories of, when are you vulnerable enough to sleep beside somebody and trust someone so much? This is a piece called Rebirth. This is our very first digital composite, and we can see that we have these sort of digitally added gunshot wounds for all of these male figures here. And then the only survivor from whatever happened here is this pregnant woman right here. So this is sort of like a metaphorical rebirth. I thought this was kind of cool because there's like a really clear distinction between this foreground, there's this gray midground, and then, or desaturated middle ground, and then we have this background. So I liked how obvious the foreground, midground, and background were. Mariko Mori, she's a Japanese fashion designer. So if any of you guys are interested in fashion and how that might correlate with the visual arts, you might want to check out her. This is a series of photoshops that she did, turning herself into various like goddesses or mythological figures. Here she is as a mermaid. Finally, we have Oliver Lyric. Oliver Lyric is a net artist, so he's a little bit of like a sarcastic artist, and a lot of the things he makes are kind of funny. You guys may not remember this, but I think it was 2009 or maybe it was 2010 when this was actually made. But Iran launched these missiles as sort of a show of nuclear, not nuclear, but as a show of military might. Um, and so this was published in newspapers, and people familiar with Photoshop said, hold up, hold up, hold up, wait a minute. There's really only two successful missile launches in this image that they released, and the other two missiles are just digital composites, and you can see, you know, that the cloud patterns are repeated for like this guy over here, and you know, so really they only launched two missiles successfully when they claimed to have launched four. And so Oliver Lyric, being a digital artist who's concerned with truth and the way that truth is, um, I guess, at jeopardy in the digital age, decided that he would do more variations that Iran could choose from. So here's one with three. This is one where they're kind of like crazy straw missiles. Here's a lot more missiles, so that feels good. There's a lot that's satisfying. Oh yeah, there's a good one right here. Oh yeah, okay, that's a lot of missiles. All right, here's a crazy world of missiles. That's pretty good. I like that. All right, pointing back. Oh no. Okay, opposite direction. Okay, all right, all right. Boop. Nothing. So, yeah, I hope that you guys got some ideas and feel like you can steal some strategies from these various artists. I will upload not only this like little me talking you through it, but I'll upload these images as well so that you can flip back through and see if there's, you know, anything that you want to take a second look at.